One of the questions I've been getting the most is, why are the silver mining stocks lagging the silver price? And to put that in perspective, I was kind of stunned by this. Hello there, my friends. Chris Marcus here with you for Arcadia Economics. Happy to check in on another exciting day in the market. Not quite as much action in the actual price of silver today. Been a little bit of a quiet week so far, although fortunately I did have a rather was my mind-blowing observation of the day in regards to the mining stocks, which we will dig into. And I'd also love to mention that tonight's episode is sponsored by First Majestic Silver. I am proud to be a First Majestic shareholder. I like trading options on First Majestic. Certainly, in my opinion, one of the, and I'm going to start putting some math to this. I think we'll see perhaps Renra, the options professor, who you may have seen on the show before, can put a little math on the actual amount, the degree of leverage to the silver price. But again, especially with not a lot of companies out there that derive the majority of their revenue from silver, of which First Majestic is one, and certainly a company that I am expecting to do quite well. As we have a silver rally, you can see it's been a bit choppy this week. Here is the open on Sunday night, about 26, as it refreshes there, 80. And then we're at 26.50-ish as I record on Tuesday afternoon. But we will dig into some things that are happening in the silver market today. Pretty excited about this one, because one of the questions I've been getting the most is, why are the silver mining stocks lagging the silver price? And to put that in perspective, I was kind of stunned by this. I was first looking at, we've looked at First Majestic with this same thing as well. So let's pull up First Majestic. I've shared this on the show before, but if you look at their chart, and we'll pull up the 1 year here. And if you just measure from the beginning of the year, here is First Majestic on December 31st, $12.26. What was the price of silver? Actually, here we'll use January 2nd. Silver is $17.92. And then on January 2nd, we have $12.22 price of First Majestic. First Majestic closed today at $11.33, so about 90 cents lower, while silver has gone from $18 essentially to 26 and change. And again, I've mentioned how there's that large short position on First Majestic Silver. Is that impacting things? Although what was kind of shocking when I saw this is that if you look at Silvercrest, you can see the same thing here. And let's pull up our Silvercrest chart. In fact, I noticed you can even track this as of a month ago. So for example, let's look at June 1st here. So basically the first, keep in mind, this whole rally, even July, look at some of these prices. Silver, less than, like only a month and a week or two ago, silver is $18.77 and was only breaking $20 just about a month ago, maybe a month and a couple of days now. But really, this big move happened quite quickly, as I'm sure you're well aware. But let's take a look at June 1st. Again, you see, and the price of silver was $18.16, and today's price we will call 26. So, $8 and change higher from June 1st. And if we look at the Silvercrest chart here on June 1st, and yes, I picked the peak there, although you see it gets close there. June 1st, Silvercrest is $9.56. And now it's $8.80. So silver went from $18 to $26, and Silvercrest is down. First Majestic is down. Let's take a look at Mag Silver and see if that's the case. I'm guessing there's a bunch of them. I mean, they often trade quite tightly in tandem. So here, let's pull up the 3-month on Mag Silver. So Mag on June 1st, 1364. So Mag has been outperforming, but again, to the degree that a lot of the reason people look to these silver mining stocks, certainly the big part of the reason why I look to the silver mining stocks is that you would expect to get leverage on that. And fortunately, in tomorrow's episode, Gwen Preston recorded an interview with her earlier today. So she'll be on explaining. We talked a little bit about how do you actually value, okay, when the price of silver moves up a certain amount, what is the amount you would think would make sense for these stocks to move up? Not a straightforward calculation, but if you hit the subscribe button below, you can stay posted. Actually hit the notification bell when that call is released. You can stay posted, because it's not, it's not a straightforward thing, but I think a lot of people were quite surprised to see. And here's my handy trading notes. I mean, because I knew it was happening with First Majestic, and now let's label this pure. This is not factually based, just something to the degree that I have a show and we talk about trading, something that I would talk about with other traders, or maybe someone I was discussing a matter, wanted to get an opinion. So I'm not by any means, don't cite this as fact, but just something that I wonder, where I have done a book that talks about big silver short, by the way, available in audio form too on the Arcadia Economics homepage. But about how the metals are, the price is distorted because banks are selling paper gold and silver to a degree that doesn't exist, which we'll put some numbers on before we wrap up tonight. Is it at least conceivable that some of the same banks that would be involved in that could be altering the share prices? I do not have any evidence to cite on that. So again, I'm not saying that, but just when I think, and maybe one of the reasons why I've enjoyed doing things the way I'm doing them rather than, doing a fund or something, is that like when I trade with my own money, I don't necessarily have to prove something to myself. I can say that, at least internally, when I make my own trading decisions, would it seem to me more likely than not that with today's Wall Street setup, where it's harder to find a market that isn't manipulated than one that is, would it seem, not telling anybody else what to do or giving financial advice, but to me, would it seem more likely than not that, the shares could be being altered, especially when you see how they're so seemingly lagging. I mean, here again, you see June 1st, Silvercrest 956. Month and a half later, silver price has gone up $8. It's down. First Majestic, and I've wondered, Keith speaks up about the silver manipulation. So is there a degree to which that would make First Majestic a target? I don't know. Again, and I want to be clear, the difference of, is there evidence of something? But when I price, is that a possibility? I think it's greater than a 0% chance. So anyway, just some things that I think about, and you can make your own decisions and price your own distribution. But again, here we see December 30th, there's silver slightly below $18. So about $8 higher. And First Majestic still down. Again, what was it at today? 1133. So I guess the good news and the reason I feel comfortable buying the shares, I mean, I don't know. I guess there's times where the price doesn't, it seems, I would much rather buy First Majestic than Tesla shares. When you look at, especially if the silver price stays where it is, let alone continues to climb, that makes more sense to me. And fine. I mean, if the price stays low, you know, I've never claimed to be a genius about the mining stocks, but to me, it felt, again, living through the housing collapse. I was actually trading options on Countrywide, was one of the stocks when I first started trading on the American Stock Exchange back then, and seeing how just, I mean, you have these fund managers duking it out over, we beat the S&P by 2 basis points, but yet when the storm comes through, you see how the whole wave goes. So I don't know, that just seemed to me, well, why not look for the clues on that? And also just suited my personality more, maybe the long-term perspective, but with the point being that, you know, I don't think we're near the end of the silver rally. I don't know what the short term will bring. I don't think I've ever claimed once to tell anyone, even if, you know, and we'll get into what the Fed seems to be cooking up. But I mean, the Fed could launch QE 5, 6, and 7, and you could see the metals lower. The same thing where it seems so counterintuitive with what you're seeing with the miners. I don't rule out that possibility. It's certainly by the fact that silver is $28 or $26 now. I mean, it has changed. So is it less likely that we see silver below $20? Yes. Would I say that that's impossible? I think if there's anything we've learned over the past decade, it's that things that seem wilder than you could imagine happen. And my studies of markets, especially of Austrian economics, we are in the exact conditions when those things become more likely to be extreme and out of line, when you have so much distortion, whether it's through the money printing or, you know, manipulation of asset prices. So I guess the good news is that one after another, and you'll hear from Gwen tomorrow night. Dave Kranzler's talked about it. I've talked about it. All the folks I bring on, in that if the prices of the metals do what I think is inevitable, especially given what the Fed and the government are making clear is inevitable, then I think all of the shares will sort themselves out, or else they'll be paying some enormous dividends at some point. So perhaps one last thought is that I do think there's also still a lot of sentiment of remembering 2016, the price came down, and, you know, again, for the companies really to be earning more money, the longer they're selling their product at the higher prices. So I think if we have, wow, it'd be interesting to see what would happen with the mining shares when and if. I think it's when. I'm trying to be legally compliant here. Official disclaimer, but I mean, I don't know. How does silver not go past 50 when the Federal Reserve is already doing open-ended QE? And now, as you'll see in a second, Powell is getting set to do something historic. I don't know, maybe he's going to fly Ben in with the helicopter and they'll both throw out, you know, $100 bills. Speaking of the figurines, we're getting there. We have some leads. I don't know if they'll be ready by Silverfest, but we'll have some fun with that. Anyway, it's going to be an exciting time. Here's another story about First Majestic that I think, at least to me, again, I don't know that there's ever one straightforward, this is the answer explanation. You have millions of different people expressing their opinions, then governments and central banks getting in and distorting things further. But I think this is just perhaps something to consider. First Majestic Silver reported its Q2 results earlier this month and saw quarterly silver equivalent produce slide by more than 43% year over year. Now, the headline, a soft Q2 due to withheld inventory and weaker output. I'm not trying, how should we phrase this? I just think that when you read the headline and the first bullet alone doesn't put it in the context that at least I would think would be perhaps the most, because yeah, all right, you know, things got delayed, they were shut down, you know, there's some cost, there's some expense, but I mean, if it's a temporary thing, now again, we'll leave aside for the moment whether there's a future shutdown, but it just makes it seem, I don't know, to me that it's like they just got slaughtered, or, the company's falling apart. I mean, that's going to be the case in a lot of places. And even here, due to withheld inventory, Keith has talked about the manipulation for years. And when the price went down to $12, he said he wasn't going to sell at that price. I mean, so now you have more output that is going to be sold at the higher price in the third quarter. And I guess what I'm getting at is, if you just look, if there's someone who doesn't understand the story, or someone in the general mainstream that doesn't know that silver went down from 18 to 12 before it went skyrocketing from there. And I think there's a lot of people that will be investing in silver or silver stocks that aren't tracking that. So I don't know. To me, if you imagine someone at one of these funds is just looking, well, Q2 earnings didn't look so good, and then they look at Q3, where now additional product that would have been sold, so that didn't get sold in the second quarter, but would be added to a future quarter, which again is not to be, I'm not making a specific comment about their earnings or what their earnings will be, but just that you've shifted it from one area to another. So if someone doesn't put these headlines in proper context, I just wonder if there's people who just look at the earnings and say, all right, well, we'll sell these stocks. Last quarter earnings were bad. Well, I mean, based on what you see here, in that, the companies were shut down. Company had a rough Q2 performance, with quarterly silver equivalent ounce production down 43% year over year, revenue down 58%. Revenue down 58% due to a decision to hold back inventory. Well, given that Corona did what it did, the thing was shut down, and that was at that point unavoidable. Gee, that sure seems, I mean, again, I'm not trying to criticize the article or the point. What he's pointing out is accurate, but at least to me, when I think about, not even sometimes is it what makes sense, but how will people respond? Because that's the whole key, where, there's the fundamentals, but we're also waiting till other people see what you see, or I don't know. It just seems like that would be a positive to me. And I would think that someone who is not familiar with the overall story of silver could read this and see this as a negative. First Majestic released its Q2 results in early August and reported quarterly production of 3.5 million ounces, down 43% year over year. This shouldn't have hurt quarterly revenues too much, as the silver price increased substantially year over year. But revenue took a massive hit due to the decision to hold back inventory for sale at a later date. Again, I think everything he's saying is technically accurate. Just understanding that there's a wide variety of different investor levels, different levels of knowledge about silver. I just see how someone reading this could see that and be more inclined to sell, whereas, at least if my underlying thesis is correct, I see that and think, wow, it seems like a lot of this stuff got pushed back to Q3. And if there's a big number there, and I don't know how it will play out, whether it will be binary or not. But again, when you look here and you see First Majestic is down while silver's up almost 50%, thinking about the psychology of these things, I think that is the type of thing that plays a factor. Another thing that plays a factor is that Jerome Powell set to deliver profoundly consequential speech, changing how the Fed views inflation. Oh, dear goodness. I cannot even imagine what it will be, although, gee, he's doing it on Thursday. This might, I might buy some weekly options on this one, especially to see silver and gold flat to down. Vols are down this week. So, and he's going to speak Thursday. Expected to outline what could be the central bank's most active efforts ever to spur inflation back to a healthy level. So, all right, let's review. We have, historic interest rate cuts for the last couple decades. QE1, QE2, Operation Twist, which, by the way, they kind of phrased that as balance sheet neutral, although they didn't mention, if there was other swap lines to Europe that were revealed at a similar time. So kind of canceled that out. That was QE light, I guess you could call it. QE3, QE4, and then at some point we got to infinite. But now we're going to make a more concerted effort to spur inflation. So for everyone that is just, concerned that things aren't expensive enough, the Fed has something new coming. Average inflation targeting means the Fed will allow inflation to run higher than normal for a period of time. That basically means it's permanent. Average inflation. And then this will be the reverse of former. Yes, this is a bit different from what Paul Volcker was doing back in his day. So, who knows how they'll phrase it. It seems like they're promising something big here. Expectations are pretty high to get something meaningful on Thursday. I talked to Dave Kranzler this morning. He was pretty heated about this one. So you will hear from him more where the money comes from for your stimulus check. And not surprisingly, it's the Federal Reserve. And that's then you have the election as well. And another person I talked with today, we've had on the show, Diane Maurice, who formerly I worked with at Moody's, and she went on to work at the Fed. And we were talking about the independence or lack thereof between the Fed and the president. I mean, they all want more money printed. And that's the one thing why I feel as comfortable doing the things, my own investments, and also coming on and sharing this. I understand the impression I'm giving, and partly, it's because she said, what's the hedge for silver? And to me, the hedge is if the Fed ever unwinds its balance sheet. And you see, they're already in a historic territory and they're finding new ways to be historic. What is 0% interest rate, which now becomes permanent? In fact, I'm going to pull this one up. This, I think, is worth seeing. Miles Franklin, Jeb Henserling. Okay. This is Jerome Powell, April of 2018. So a little bit over 2 years ago. I was stunned when I saw this one because during a congressional testimony, you have this guy, Jeb Henserling, questioning Jerome Powell, and this is when they were supposedly getting ready to tighten, which they tried slightly at the end of 2018 before they quickly reversed course. He says, with respect to normalization, I think you had said publicly that you expect the new normal with respect to the size of the balance sheet to be roughly 2.5 to 3 trillion and get there over 3 to 4 years. Do I understand that correctly, Mr. Chairman? And he just nods his head and says yes. And you can see I was a little mind boggled because when exactly did that become the plan? Fed's balance sheet was under 900 billion before Bernanke started the QE programs. It was always sold as temporary. Then here's 2018. They're talking about they're just going to reduce it to 2.5 to 3 trillion. I said then that meant that it would never happen, especially when they say over 3 to 4 years. Sure enough, here we are, back over 7 trillion today, and the Fed is getting ready to target average inflation. It means they're gonna. Let's go back to this article, and we'll you can actually just replace each sentence with print money. So We're inspecting future plans to print money. Scared by first correction in the U.S. equity, well, it means they're going to print money. Historic for the Fed to announce a different way to print money. Anything that would be aimed at goosing the markets by printing money. I mean, you can look at, it's a fun game. You can play at home with any article about Federal Reserve history. And that's why, that's what you're counting. That's the hedge against silver. Or is Donald Trump going to get together with Nancy Pelosi, Mitch McConnell, and say, gee, better do something about that 200 trillion plus of unfunded liabilities in Social Security and Medicare? We have a bankrupt government. We can't pay it. We should probably tell them. Now, our voters aren't going to be happy when they find out that those systems are completely bankrupt, but we should probably tell them now. And oh wow, let's see the debt clock today. What's it up to now? Debt clock in the US. So 26, I remember writing an article for Miles Franklin a couple of years ago where it was like crossing 22 trillion, and you only heard them talk about when it would hit 30 trillion. Now it's close to 27 trillion. So that's the long-term hedge against silver and gold, is that in the long term, I don't know, if you see those things happening, them winding down the debt, unwinding Fed's balance sheet, and and acknowledging to their voters that the entitlement programs are bankrupt. I don't see any way that's happening. I haven't met anyone who can explain how that could happen. It seems to me mathematically impossible. And, so could silver go back below 20 bucks? I would not say there's 0% chance. But to me, that's why, even as someone who used to trade equity options, a bit short-term in nature, it's like, wow, I can just continue to have fun studying it, leave it there, do as little as possible, and watch things like the silver Comex deliveries. So you can see up here are the silver futures, kind of been setting records throughout the year. There was a big one back in July. We're not too far away from getting the first notices in September. A look at the open interest. Now keep in mind, here was July, was a record at 17,294. Open interest still at 49,000. I'm expecting that between now and when first deliveries are posted, that will come down quite a bit, but still a hefty number. And is it possible that that could be some portion of an unraveling on the COMEX? Certainly that possibility exists. I don't know that I would say, it's hard to ever say any specific point is a favorite, or it's like, oh, this is definitely going to happen. Is it possible things could, I don't know, maybe if it ends up being 30,000 contracts, that could, I think we're certainly in that time period where, it could happen tomorrow. It could be a year, or perhaps even some number of years more than I might think is possible. I don't think that's going to be the case, but part of that will be fun to find out. Real quick look here at the ETF inflows. Interesting, you see the 4-week change there has come down quite a bit. Had been over 100 million ounces for a while. And you can see that things have slowed down going into the trust in the last couple of weeks. Certainly that's something we'll dig into at Silverfest. Ronan Manley is going to be talking about that. Andrew McGuire, also Ted Butler. It's going to be quite a party. So we'll be excited to see you there. And again, you can sign up for Silverfest right down here. You can click here to see the schedule. We'll be watching Trading Places the first night. I believe we already have over 100 people signed up on their way to come, and kind of just getting things up and running now. But I believe we'll have a few confirmations on some of the companies coming soon. I'll be updating the schedule as we confirm some more guests, but now Ronan Manley will be there. Andrew McGuire will be there, and Ooh, if my calendar, yes, looks like Andrew McGuire will be next Tuesday on the show as well. So it's going to be a great time, especially again, Gwen Preston will be on tomorrow night. I think you'll really enjoy that call with her. And she is going to be attending one of the Silver Stock panels. So again, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell, and go sign up to Silverfest. Reserve your spot. Fortunately, it is free to attend. It's going to be Silver Fantasy Camp. And geez, if there was industry that's ever deserved a party more, and with all of the special people we have attending, my goal is to make it the hottest party since the Hunt Brothers. So I hope to see you there. We're going to have a lot of fun. I believe we will have Keith Newmeyer coming as well, getting that confirmed. But again, just one more time, would like to mention that tonight's episode was brought to you by First Majestic Silver. It's a company you're going to be hearing a lot more about. So stick around, because a recent interview with Keith of First Majestic Silver is coming your way now.